Hi everyone. I was watching this. What is it? It's a young gentleman who worked for TPUSA. He's gay. I guess I don't know, what do we call them now? When I was young, they were coming out of the closet. Now going back in the closet. I don't know, but they're open about it, so it's not a closet. A reformed gay person. I don't know. What I'm interested in, and then, I'm not anybody who knows me. I don't judge anybody. Um, they may get pissed off, but yeah, in terms of lifestyle, your lifestyle. If you do something illegal, that's another matter. Um, but it was interesting, the interview with Milo and Tucker Carlson. And, I mean, Tucker Carlson, he's conservative Christian, but, he was a preppy growing up in the 70s and 80s, like me, East Coast preppy. Yeah, that were your parents. That was like uncool, I mean, everybody was coming out. Oh my God, particularly Washington, D.C. And, these are the Capitol Hill, the political kids that are coming in to the market. I mean, I'm 20 years old. I was like, yeah, all the men in Washington, either they have zipper problems and they're sleeping around with anything that moves. With women, well, they're sleeping. See, that was applicable for the straight men and the heterosexual men. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and the thing is the gay men. I mean, almost all my roommates were gay men. Men are much easier to live with than women. And gay men, they're just no. When you're straight, I mean, you're a straight woman and a gay, it's like living with a girlfriend. There's never going to be any like, oh, I want to sleep you, whatever. You get the picture. So, I had no issues. I was like better than living a lie. And then coming out of the closet when you have a wife and kids. Uh, so one of my classmates at Foxcroft of the Biddle family, Pam Biddle, and her parents are Washington upper crust. Uh, that happened to her. I was like, oh, that must be kind of weird with you for you to have your father like that. Anyway, I digress. But it just, I I'm not, I don't understand because Tucker Carlson was saying, well, okay, there's nothing now. We have all of this DNA testing and stuff. There's no gene. We find no like gene, or because everybody was saying it was biological. You were just born that way. So if you're born that way, it's like your hair color, your eye color. Um, that's okay. Well, then we should have a gene there. Some biological base, but it doesn't appear to be that way. So it's all kind of curious. What I remarked was elevated level of narcissism, uh, which kind of gets into the Greek mythology of the narcissist, and loved to party. Love to hang out with the mean girls. Oh, the mean girls. I mean, it's like Megyn Kelly when she gets together. What's his name? Lance. I forget what his last name is. Yeah, Lance, him, and excuse me, Megyn Kelly and Maureen Callahan. I'm like, this is, this is a modern day Capote Swan scene. And that's why if you look with Megyn Kelly, for example, with the Tyler Robinson case, right away, no presumption of innocence, no due process. The authorities said he did it, and I want the death penalty, and I even want to be there when it happens. Yeah, these are Christian values. So this is, what I've been looking at in the entire Charlie Kirk assassination investigation into who killed him, what's going on with TPUSA, what's going on in the courts in the case against Robinson. But there's satanic, there's definitely some satanic ritual stuff going on in Arizona, the political arena there. You got Andy Biggs. So there's some questions there. Lots of dots that need to be connected. Just, as I say, still kind of muddling through. There's the Lake Havasu stuff with Andy Biggs' son-in-law, Chancellor of Dracul, his wife's death. Yeah, so anyway, this is another kind of this whole, like the dancing. I just, I'm watching the TPUSA parties, this online thing, their fireworks on stage, whatever it is, sprinklers. It just is all like tacky Catholic ostentation is the word that are the words that come to mind. So yeah, okay. So anyway, I was looking, let's take a look first at yeah, so there's all the cult stuff. There's the other stuff that I did. Also, several people have said that Charlie looked like he knew he was going to be shot. I still can't believe he actually believed he was going, being that calm and going and being, yeah, I'll be sacrificed and I'm going to be killed, and just being very calm about it. Normally, like, you'd have to be drugged up or something. That just doesn't fit. That doesn't fit. So what's going on there? You all tell me in the comments. Yeah, the theories there. I don't know. I don't know what, but that's where we are with the evidence, and that's what you want to look at, the evidence. The other thing that's very strange, John Bray, he's done a lot of analysis on the videos and watching Charlie Kirk get assassinated, and there's been doctors. So these are experts, real experts in the forensic stuff here. They said no, Charlie Kirk, he had all the signs of like being killed immediately, some trauma to the back of the vertebrae or the neck or something, but all of that crisping up and all of these things, and that it was pretty much instant that he was killed. What is it that killed him? We don't know. Now there's the bullet in the ballistic, in the autopsy report, the fragment of the bullet. Has the autopsy report been faked? I don't know. The defense, excuse me, the prosecution And the federal government are withholding, and this is illegal. I mean, this is grounds to have the whole thing thrown out. Um, so it is possible that that would have happened. I don't know. But anyway, okay, so now we have, let's just take it at face value. Now we have a bullet fragment. Okay, we don't have proof that it came from a gun. But the bullet, if you have a bullet fragment, then your the what do you call it? The explosion. It's not a bomb, but the explosion from the little chip microphone or the cross on Charlie's neck, the explosion theory then has some holes in it. It doesn't exclude it. It could have happened, and you also have some bullet that was fired, shot was fired. The issue with the bullet that being fired, you shooting Charlie. I mean, okay, you got to have a really good sniper, and ballistic people, sniper experts out there. I mean, what is the possibility? What is the, let's say, what is the probability that you would miss and hit somebody else? Um, because that would have to be taken into account. Do you really want to run that risk? Because again, if this is a professional job, Tyler Robinson, that again becomes unlikely that it's him. So are you going to do a real bullet? Because this is this was also came up. So that's another issue with the bullet being there being bullet fragments or signs of an actual bullet in the autopsy report of Charlie. Um, you know, okay, so what's the that proves that there was somebody shooting, but he's going to have to be damn good. This is going to have to be a real world professional. Because if you just take some kid out there and say shoot, your probability of hitting somebody else is like off the roof compared to some professional sniper. Now, if you believe Hollywood, you know, okay, you know, your possibility of missing is like almost zero. Now, maybe this is the thing. Was he off the mark? Is that where the whatever it is in Charlie's neck, whatever the wound, let's just call it the wound in Charlie's neck, it didn't hit the chest, it hit the neck, but then you're not talking about this 30-06 that would have blown open his chest, it would have blown his head off. So what is that? And then also, what's going on with somebody trying to get out of or jump out of the police reports, the chatter between the police radios of the SUV, the van, going down the highway with somebody coming out the side. What's going on there? I mean, we should have some, I don't know, any of the reporters. Is there a way to find out who the police officers are? What exactly they saw? Interview them? What did you see? I mean, probably they're told not to speak. Anyway, those are still, I don't know. You tell me again. Okay, so let's look into a little bit more of a deep dive into TPUSA and kind of the hedonistic, if not satanic, behavior going on in this place. Okay, oops, come on. Let me just put the sound on.
The other one is about perception. Tune in next week for more of this topic as we dive deeper into counter programming.
Yeah, okay. Come on.
What's up, everybody out there? Matthew Tucciaroni with Truth Over Paradigm, Citizens Over Systems, Truth Over Fear. You know, there's a story out there in the Bible about something called the Whore of Babylon, a symbol of society obsessed with wealth, power, and control. Most people think it's just a story about ancient times, about some empire long gone. But what if Babylon isn't a place? What if it's a system? A system where politics become performance, where influencers become political leaders, where organizations become brands, and where the line between truth and image starts to disappear. In the modern world, political power doesn't just come from Washington, D.C. It comes from media companies, influencer organizations, big donors, and the people who control the narrative. Organizations like TPUSA, influencers like Erica Kirk, Miss Erika Franz-Faye, James O'Keefe, and others have built massive political influence, not by being elected, but by controlling attention, media, and the narrative. So in this episode, I want to ask a question that might make people uncomfortable. Are we fighting corruption and propaganda, or are we watching a new version of Babylon being built right in front of us? You can decide for yourself. Politics is left versus right. But what if that entire paradigm is designed to keep you enslaved to the system? I worked inside the world of political activism, and what I saw changed everything. I was employed by organizations like Turning Point USA, and I started to see just how narratives are shaped, pushed, and repeated. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the abominations of the earth.
I want everybody to be clear that, you know, this is just one amongst many. I mean, come to Washington, go to New York City, you know, the Erica Kirk, Babylonian women, they're a dime a dozen. So this is really just kind of an expose of what's happening there. Because these are the meccas, you know, everybody's following the lead. You want the realizing your dream means coming to either, you know, New York and working in the fashion industry, or like with Candace Owens, journalism. DC, it's the same type of thing, politics or journalism. But it's all this, you know, coming to the urban areas and these mecca. Hollywood is an actress, of course, but to realize your dreams and to become rich and famous and a star. And we worship these people, and that's what the American dream is. And that's not what the American dream is. That's not why the Puritans, the Quakers came here.
For all the nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. In the book of Revelation, Babylon is described as more than just a city. It is described as a system of wealth, power, influence, and seduction. The text describes a woman dressed in purple and scarlet, covered in gold and jewels. Holding a golden cup on her forehead is written a name, Babylon the Great. The description is not just about immorality. It is about luxury, power, and influence. The text says that the kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxury. In other words, Babylon represents a partnership between political power, economic power, and cultural influence. It represents a system where wealth, influence, and power all work together. Throughout history, many people have tried to identify Babylon as a specific place. Ancient Rome, powerful empires, financial capitals, or political centers. But there is another way to understand the warning in Revelation. Instead of a place, Babylon can be understood as a pattern that appears in powerful societies over and over again throughout history. First, a society becomes wealthy and powerful. Then politics become entertainment. Influence becomes a business. Public figures become brands. And eventually, the line between truth and performance begins to disappear. In the modern world, influence does not only come from elected officials. Influence comes from...
Another thing about the cult stuff and the ritual stuff, those rings that Erika has on her hands after Charlie Kirk's death. She said that's about her children. I don't believe it.
From media organizations, political organizations, influencers, donors, and the people who control large audiences and shape public opinion. Modern politics is no longer just about policy. It is about media, branding, viral clips, online...
That was one of the strangest, morbid things I think I've ever seen. With her, like, this was obviously staged. Why? What would ever possess someone to post that on the internet? Really? I mean, then she's always screaming and yelling about her privacy. I mean, she's just like Meghan Markle. Excuse me, Duchess of Sussex. It's like there's some rhyme to her, reason, but I think that she is the only one who knows what tune she's dancing to. Kind of like the village crazy ladies. Oh, Lord.
Influence in controlling the narrative. Political rallies look like concerts. Influencers become political authorities, organizations become media companies. And the people with the most attention often have the most power, even if they were never elected by anyone. The question is not whether Babylon existed in the past. The question is whether the same pattern exists today. A system where politics, money, influence, media, and image all work together while the public watches the performance and believes it is reality. Because if Babylon is a pattern, not just a place, then the real warning in Revelation is not about where Babylon was, but about what Babylon is. All right, everyone, welcome back to the commentary portion of this show. I really hope you enjoyed the documented segment, and you can expect more of that here on Truth Over Paradigm. But I want to roll right into it. Let's talk about America. Isn't this what America really represents at this point in time? A nation that became wealthy, a nation that became powerful, and now a nation that is seductive and seduces everybody in this country.
But see, this is the America of the robber barons, the Astors, the Vanderbilts, Manhattan, Dutch. This is not the America of the English Puritans and Quakers, nor even the English of the southern colonies, which were charters. I mean, those weren't the Puritans or the Quakers. They came for money, make money.
Seduces the entire planet. The entire planet is drunk off of all these abominations. America is center stage. I know globally other countries partake in the drunken mess of this debauchery, but America is center stage. This country masks itself in Christianity, hides behind biblical principles, but at the same time, behind closed doors, this is what organizations like TPUSA, people like Benny Johnson, people like James O'Keefe, these are the people that hide behind this false Christianity and do the same.
The thing is that the left is just as hedonistic. I mean, they're just as hedonistic, but at least it's kind of like, well, with the left, at least they're not hypocrites about it. The conservatives, you guys hide behind this holier than thou. I mean, this is since I was a child. Holier than thou bullshit, and you're the worst backstabbing witches and cult mentality that there is. I'm more seeing with the hippies and the MK Ultra stuff. Yeah, that's as it's how shall I say, it's the same mentality, the same educational process that'll produce somebody who becomes this easy prey to the extreme right or the extreme lefts, their cult, and you got to be popular. You have to conform, otherwise you'll be ostracized, you'll be shunned. Those are the Amish. So all of these religions use this, but it's the secular, all of the atheists, the human rights people. Oh God, Jennifer Welch particularly, she gets out there talking about human rights and her atheism, and I'm like, oh my Lord, y'all are just as bad as the evangelical Christians that you're so criticizing.
Same thing that the whores all do. I'm no saint. I've been drunk off of the whores' abominations many times in my life. Many, many times. And I know some of you out there question my sexuality of me being a gay man. How can I speak out against all this abomination but be gay? Well, let me tell you something. I have a personal relationship with God. We all have a personal relationship with God. My journey with God is my journey with God. It's my business. And I talk to him on a daily basis about my sexuality. And you know what? I am working on it. I am working on it. And I ask anybody out there, he who is without sin, please cast the first stone. I'm not casting stones at the horrors of Babylon.
Yeah, anybody who's attacking him, gets into all of the personal attacks that are going on out there. His being gay, or sexual preferences, any of those things, it's just vicious bullshit. It has nothing to do with anything that he's talking, about the hedonism, the immorality that's going on. We'll see when we get into the Sodom and the Babylon videos.
Babylon or Turning Point USA or Miss Erica Kirk. I'm calling it out though. I'm not judging. I'm calling it out because be true to yourselves. Be true, Erica. If you would just admit that you have partaked in the drunkenness of the whore of Babylon, just like most Americans have, like myself, and admit that, we can actually have a conversation and we can talk about these problems. But when you use Christianity and act like you never partook in any of this in your past, that's when, well, I like to call out the bullshit. That's when I like to call out the bullshit.
Yeah, because the partying is going on. The double standards and the hypocrisy of the TPUSA, and that's the real reason that it's falling apart. It's not, Erica Kirk is blaming Candace for that. It's falling apart because of the internal problems. Now, Candace is not helping the situation, of course. And I do wish Candace she is getting a bit, I don't, it's not personal, but it is a bit too much focus on Erica Kirk. The focus at present should be like the questions that I brought up at the beginning. Well, what is going on with this investigation? What is going on with the courts? Rather than, is Erica Kirk having a meltdown? I think we all see that. And I just think it's tacky to and lacks class to profit from that and shine the light on that. Now, if Erica, this is why it's important to find out what's going on with the investigation. Who killed Charlie? Was Erica really involved? I mean, it is a possibility. But again, it's due process and presumption of innocence before you start saying, I know Erica Kirk was involved in, killed her husband. I've been guilty of myself of, going and saying that, and that's not right. So I think that's kind of where everything should be focused.
And I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm no saint. Again, I will repeat that. I'm no saint. I've been through it. I partook in a lot of this. And I want to talk to you about my experience in Washington, D.C. when I lived there from 2012 to around 2014. It was brief. But for whatever reason, I always love to be that person in the room in these big crowds with these big, powerful people. I somehow end up in these rooms. I ended up in the White House, not on tour, but somebody invited.
Oh, God. See, this is what somebody says that to me, and I'm just like, oh, God. Yeah, Houston, we got a problem. It's like any personality, anybody could actually enjoy. I've been in these situations. I've been in these places too many times. Okay, not in the White House. I did visit the White House when I did the whole debutante bullshit in DC. But, and I worked up on Capitol Hill for when I was in college. Yeah, the whole embassy stuff when you're living abroad. It's the same type of functions and the same group of people. Oh Lord, there's the Ambassador Ann Patterson to Colombia. Oh, that fits into the whole house of cards. That's when I was in Bogota. But yeah, oh God, how could you actually enjoy? It's like, for me, it's like, okay, it's something painful that must be, yeah, I don't know, like, okay, when they're taking blood or something, and I have low blood pressure, so it's like, I, it's it's not something, it's a bad thing for me. But it's like taking blood, okay, I just have to put up with it because they got to figure out what the problem is. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. No. Oh my God. You cannot believe how much I despise these type of functions. No. No.
Me that worked at the White House. And I've been there. I've been around these people. I've seen,
Yeah.
I partook in these parties. Now, I will tell you, never been to a party though, where there was underage things going on. That's the line I draw. Leave the children alone. But some of these people in these parties that I was at are actually in the files.
Well, when I was underage, okay, we were drinking. There was, oh, if any sex was going on, it was amongst the underage kids. So, I mean, it wasn't with the old fogies, but, come to think of it, there was a couple of them, but still, I mean, not at that parties, but I knew some girls who dated older men. There was one girl at Foxcroft. She was I don't know who he was, but yeah, he was much older than she was.
So let me tell you about my little experience in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you that, you know what? The Democrats, the Republicans, they're both implicated in all this debauchery going on in this country. Okay? But for some reason, the Republican Party, I would say, partakes in more of this behavior than the Democrats. The Democrats, you know what? It's out there. They're in our face about it. The Republicans, like I said, there's the facade, Christianity, and that's where they hide. They hide behind Christianity and act like they're good little saints when they're not. So in DC, I had a boyfriend. His name was Kyle. Kyle worked previously under the Bush administration, because when I lived in DC, I was under the Obama administration. Not me particularly being under the Obama administration, but like when you live in DC, that's what people say. You're like, oh, okay, it's during the Obama era, it's during the Trump era, it's during the Bush era. So I lived in DC during the Obama era. But Kyle introduced me to a whole world of wealth, power, influence. He previously dated Joan Rivers' nephew, and we all know what happened to Joan Rivers for telling the truth about Michael Obama. But he introduced me to this world, and I was just like, holy crap, wow. I was drunk off of the excess, the influence, the Prada shoes, the Gucci, the socialite scene and everything in Washington, D.C. And everything that I talked about in this documented portion of the show in the beginning is what I saw in Washington, D.C. And Kyle introduced me to somebody his name was Lanny Griffith. Lanny Griffith was a big time lobbyist, a Republican in Washington, D.C. He's no longer with us today. He has passed on, and I'm pretty sure God is talking to this man heavily. And I don't know where he is in the afterlife, but I'll tell you where he might be just by explaining exactly who he was. Lanny had a few kids, a wife. He was
Tommy Boggs of Louisiana transformed DC lobbying business into what it is today. His father came to Washington after combating corruption in Louisiana under Huey Long. After Huey Long, it was followed by Edwin Edwards.
Was worth $100 million, but something about Lanny Griffith, he lived a closeted gay life. Now, Lanny knew Kyle before I knew Kyle. Lanny is what got Kyle involved in drugs and alcohol. And throughout me dating Kyle, he was always drunk. He was high on cocaine, etc. Lanny would feed it to him. Lanny would buy him drugs, would buy him cocaine, etc. Well, one night, Kyle said to me, hey, Lanny wants to take you and I to New York City for the weekend. And we're going to have fun. We're going to stay at the Four Seasons in New York City. And we're just going to have a fun weekend. And Lanny's going to take us shopping on Fifth Avenue. So I said, sure, let's go. Let's do it. Like I said, I knew this world was bad, but I wanted to see for myself. I'm a very curious person. So we go to New York City. We're in Prada. We're in Gucci. We're shopping. Lanny's just charging his card. while talking to his wife on the phone. And after he gets off the phone, he comes into the dressing room with me and Kyle at Prada and pulls out a bag of Coke, and we're all doing Coke. The Prada attendants are bringing us champagne, etc. He spends...
Sounds like the story a little bit with Jean Carroll and Donald Trump. Not the champagne and the cocaine, but perhaps.
About 10 grand on me, 10 grand on Kyle. And we go back to the Four Seasons. And next thing you know, he's calling up rent boys and all these male prostitutes to come over to the Four Seasons. And it's nothing but one giant sex party. This is a Republican lobbyist, Lanny Griffith. And this is where your tax dollars are going.
This is the life I was, the Reagan era. This is the life that I left behind. You know, at first I was like, okay, I'm not going to get into politics. I got into finance just because I was looking for a job. That was the first interview that came, the first job offer, working for, it was E.F. Hutton. Okay, so that's how I ended up. I was there for 2.5 years. But I was like, oh, Lord, these people are even worse. And that was 87. So I packed my bags and left. Went to Paris to learn French. I was an au pair, jeune fille au pair. And he was the guy was a merger and acquisition businessman, bankruptcy building guy. Again, real nice guy, though. Very sad. He died of a heart attack. His daughter, his eldest daughter, very intelligent. She's working, I think, still, European Central Bank. Yeah, see. Yeah. Oh.
Or were, since he's no longer with us. That's my experience in Washington, D.C. in a nutshell. In a nutshell, that's my experience in Washington, D.C. So now in college, I was part of a fraternity. I had fun, had a great time. Well, that's where, you know, I started to drink a lot. I started to do cocaine a lot, etc. College campuses as well. They're nothing more than the whore of Babylon and where debauchery takes place. And I could see why Charlie Kirk really despised college. But it's showing you all exactly what this whole topic in this show today represents. And that's excess. That's the whole.
College is not a center of learning. For most of the kids that go there, I mean, most of the people that I know, I'm like, you guys have MBAs and PhDs and stuff that you don't even understand. The bachelor level 101 course, like marketing. And I'm like, I understand more about marketing from first day of marketing 101 class than all of these people with their MBAs, including my niece and my neighbor in Madrid who worked for Bank of America. It's all of this. It's a waste of time and money. And I am for higher education, like a liberal arts college, 2 to 4 years for everybody, just like, you know, they go to high school. Most people, well, now we got the problem of those who are graduating from high school who don't know how to read and write. Yeah, so that they're like, where can we start with the problems of education, health? That's another one. We're not going to get into that, otherwise we'll be here for a couple of days.
Babylon, it is a system. It is not a city. It is not a place. It is an entire system. It is a psychological operation. Everything is a psychological operation.
Oh, yeah.
In this country. Everything. All right, everybody. So I want to bring you now to, well, let's talk about TPUSA. Let's talk about Erica Kirk. Let's talk about the after parties that go on at TPUSA. James O'Keefe, specifically, that is the after party.
Oh, yeah, the after parties. Huh? Yeah, there's always the after parties. I'll tell you. Because there, let's just put it this way. When the discotheques, the nightclubs are open, the cops can come in. The theoretical, you know, like the after parties, the sky's the limit.
Of the after parties, okay? That is the after party of AmFest. It's the official after party for AmFest. AmFest, as you know, happens every year in December in Phoenix at the convention center. James O'Keefe always promotes his after parties there, etc. James O'Keefe has his own booth at AmFest. All right. And some of you have seen this video. It went viral on X. It's my own footage from the James O'Keefe after party, but it depicts, it doesn't depict, it shows a half naked woman, not in a bathing suit like some commenters said on X. It is lingerie with the American flag wrapped around her in a wine glass. The wine glass that was talked about in Revelation. Yeah. The wine glass of the whore of Babylon, full of abomination. Yeah. That's what was in center of the club that James O'Keefe used for the after party for AmFest. This is the debauchery, folks, that's going on. Take a look at this video.
Yeah, that's lingerie. I mean, she's even got like she does the garter belt. I don't know if she's got a garter belt or not, but yeah.
Now, James O'Keefe did have a comment to say on this viral X post, and he said, has nothing to do with TPUSA, yada, 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 that it was his party, and so what, pretty much, Americans just want to have a good time. Well, James, you can't really say that
Girls just want to have fun. I mean, it's just all about party hardy. The country has become a shit show, third world. I mean, this is why they're going to have another war to toughen everybody up.
it has nothing to do with TPUSA when you're at the TPUSA event promoting the party. And here's a video of him doing it.
James O'Keefe, over here. I was going to ask him really quick, if you don't mind.
Usually that's a big man, but I know, I just need 5 seconds.
James, is this the attire for the party tonight?
What's that?
Is this the attire for the party tonight?
Oh, no, there's 12 costumes.
12 costumes, okay.
Changes.
12
costume changes.
Okay.
Are you coming?
I am, sir.
Here, take one of these.
Awesome.
Please promote the party. It goes to a good cause. They want a funeral. We are also going to inspire and bring joy and music and laughter. Mm-hmm. We need to inspire people to be brave.
Yep.
That's the message.
100%.
They want us to cower down in fear. They want us on a leash. They want us to dance. We're not going to dance with them. We're going to dance to the sound of our own drummer. Stay tuned.
Yes, sir. And
oh my God. Okay, so first, who does his hair? What does he have it on his head? I mean, don't tell me that that's on purpose. My Lord. The hairdressers have become as crazy and as expensive as the fashion designers. Yeah, and this whole cult of rallying up people, you know, exciting them with the music and the fanfare and get them revved up into that, I don't know how to explain it, this group think, and this is the way you get people to, you can get them to get to good things with this or bad things, you know, like a pep talk before a team goes out onto the field to play whatever game they're playing. You know, like we're all a team, you know, the whole rah, rah, rah stuff. But it's just, there's no substance behind any of this. Well, the substance is, let's just say this is a facade for some pretty bad substance.
thank you, James.
Casey.
Right, James. Has nothing to do with TPUSA. Well, then Lucas Miles, the director of TPUSA Faith, also said the same thing. But he said that he was at the party before he worked for TPUSA and after he worked for TPUSA. So he's been to multiple James O'Keefe's after parties after AmFest. And James O'Keefe always throws parties for TPUSA. It doesn't have to be AmFest as well. And Lucas Miles said he was praying in the background, yada, 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 that they were doing God's work, evangelizing people at a nightclub. All right. So you can't deny it, Turning Point. You guys try to deny and act like, oh, it's one of our influencers, so we have nothing to do with it. But yet you're sitting there on stage at AmFest during the TPUSA faith part of AmFest and talking about Christianity and God's values. Don't go to these clubs. Don't do this. But your after parties, though, hosted by your influencers, just because it's separated, you all don't have any responsibility or accountability. You all are a bunch of hypocrites. A bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know what's interesting is that I have all the receipts of James promoting all of this. And you all are still denying. This is the typical response from Talking Point Toilet Paper USA. So I find it interesting that we also know that Erica Kirk and her mother are pretty much responsible for all of the events, even when Charlie was alive. Charlie was just the face. We all know now that people were controlling.
See, this is something that's interesting, and I mean, it would be interesting to know. Candace Owens, I think, would know more about this. Was Erica Kirk started like in charge of all of the events? Was all of the pomp and circumstance? Because it was grotesque. It is grotesque. Did that start under her and with her, and that's all her doing? And that she wasn't just, home with the kids. I mean, when my children were babies, until we got to, I mean, things were a little bit easier in Paris, but the first 4 years, so when we got to Brussels, I found out I was pregnant like a week after we got there. So, I mean, I was delighted, but of course I'm not going to go and look for a job, and then go on maternity leave. So I was like, so what? So anyway, I signed up for Spanish and French classes, and I did like 25 hours a week of course, classes. So that kept me busy. And so anyway, but when I had both my sons were babies and early, young toddlers in Brussels and in Paris. I mean, like Paris, I was like, oh, thank God. Let's see, we had like a girl who they have these, like I had lived in, these rooms for the maids. This is up in the Haussmannian, these Parisian apartment buildings. So there was a student lived up there, and in exchange, she would babysit, I think it was two afternoons a week. She would while she took the kids to the park, I went to it was this jewelry school that I had signed up with at Le Marie with it was this local thing. So, and it was just, I mean, I've worked with gold and stuff like that. That was at the very beginning, just learning how to cut metals and stuff like that. But it was the basic. And I mean, I had spent, other than that, I had no family, nothing. But I can tell you, my point being that I didn't do anything except change diapers, clean kids, cook, all of that. I mean, very happily. But what I'm saying is, if my husband had been like, okay, you got to be here and do all of this event planning and I mean, I would have had to have had well, they call them nannies now, but a maid, babysitter. When we got to Bogota, for example, we did have a live-in maid, but the kids also were in school, and when they got into school was when I started doing some stuff. So yeah, if Erica Kirk was doing all of this event planning when she's having her babies, she's not the trad wife staying home. And I, it's like, excuse me, all of you little conservatives and stuff looking down. I mean, I get it. Okay. I've done it with the feminist and their fake women's rights stuff and their human rights stuff and all of that shit. But you conservative Christians giving me the middle finger because I'm an old lady and I'm going to rain on your parade. Like, you're as hypocritical, full bullshit as the liberals. So here, listen. Okay, yeah. So Erica Kirk is having babies and she's doing all of this stuff, the event stuff for TPUSA. Again, I don't know. Can Candace confirm it?
Charlie, like Tyler Boyer, and like Miss Erica Kirk. And she was responsible for these events and the logistics and how they went down. Here's a video in 2020 when Charlie was 27 years old at an event thrown by TPUSA of these girls blasting money into the crowd. In 2020, Charlie already knew Erica. They met in 2018.
Blasting money into the crowd. This is a religious organization, Christian religious organization. That is like so Hollywood. PSYOP, let's make a deal, cameras, action. Oh, God.
So who do you think took over TPUSA in 2018? Who do you think took over the logistics? Because it was never as flashy as it became. Even when Charlie was alive post 2020, it started becoming flashy. Here's the moment Turning Point USA started to become flashy.
Bang energy. God.
Well, there you go, folks. It's right in your faces. TPUSA, Erica Kirk, the depiction of the whore of Babylon is right in your face. Miss Erica Kirk. Now, let's get to Erica Kirk. Erica Kirk is nothing more than a fake, a phony, and a fraud. She is an actor.
Okay, no, fake, phony, fraud, actor. Okay, that just describes everybody in New York and everybody in Washington, D.C. So don't hold it against her as something, abnormal. That's the standard. Okay, so I gotta lift my hand in a little bit of a defense of Erica, saying she's par for the course, buddy. She's not really. She's just a symptom of the problem.
Playing her role in this part to influence and psyop our youth.
Yeah.
Here's a video of Erica Kirk, and this was sent in to me by a former TPUSA employee. This individual was employed at TPUSA, specifically Turning Point Action, which is the side that I was employed in before I left. She remained at Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action. She's at AmFest in 2025 last year. She sent me a video of a private staff meeting that Erica Kirk and Mikey McCoy held for everybody at AmFest. It's showing Erica Kirk standing on a coffee table with gold, and she's raised and she's sitting there like this. And Mikey McCoy is in the background talking about how God has pretty much orchestrated all of this to bring Erica Kirk about. Take a listen.
Led the staff meeting because Charlie had to fly back to Palm Beach with the president. And it's crazy to look back and you just kind of see the Lord kind of knitting his own beautiful image that sometimes we just don't always see. But we're blessed to be here for the second staff meeting at AmFest with you.
All right, everybody. Now I want you to take a listen of my little commentary on Mikey McCoy. God's weaving for you, Erica. Oh, right.
Oh, Erica, we're just knitting. We're knitting for God. God placed you here. Magic hands, Mikey McCoy. Oh, God, Erica, Mother Mary, let me feed you some grapes. Gay.
You know, they're mocking God right in front of our faces. They're mocking God. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I feel a little sorry for Mikey McCoy. Yeah, he's an awkward kid, and I think his father is a real piece of work. Yeah, as I say, little compassion, people. There's lot of healing that needs to be done out there. A lot of exposure needs to be done, but
And, I think Stu Peters put it perfectly when I was on his show. All that's missing is grapes being hand fed to Miss Erica Kirk from Mikey McCoy. And I'm going to show you a clip from the Stu Peters show. You all let me know what you think about Erica Kirk on the coffee table, which is a glorified pedestal for her.
That's why she sent that video of Erica and Mikey, at that staff meeting at AmFest. Because we see there's smart people in Turning Point, and then there's really not so smart people. And the smart ones are the ones getting fired.
Yeah, we have that video. I actually want to roll that again here real quick. Let's roll this Erica Kirk video. We can't see this one enough.
Really led the staff meeting because Charlie had to fly back.
I'm going to point out his thing there, his take there, that's constructive criticism. The mocking of no fan of Mikey McCoy. I think there's issues with Mikey McCoy, but I just feel sorry for the kid with a father like his.
Beat the president, and it's crazy to look back and you just kind of see the Lord kind of knitting his own beautiful image that sometimes we just don't always see. But we're blessed to be here for the second staff meeting at AmFest with you.
Okay, so that video shows Erica Kirk standing on a coffee table on a pedestal. She's prepping for her first time leading AmFest. Now, Mikey McCoy recalls a time previous to that when Charlie was unavailable for AmFest. I guess he was traveling with the president, and Erica stood in for him then. And shockingly, Mikey takes this moment not to reminisce about Charlie's legacy, but to insinuate instead that Charlie being assassinated was all part of God's plan to usher in the coming of Erica Kirk, and everyone in the room is just all smiles. I mean, do you see anything different?
No, Stu. They're happy as can be. Even another video that's out there is the Lacey Nagel, the Turning Point director. Happy as can be, drunk at an event, showing
sloppy
off
drunk. Embarrassingly, shockingly drunk.
Yep. My friend was embarrassed, and you can tell by the young guys behind her. I mean, they were very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This is the behavior, just like what you saw with Mikey McCoy and Erica on the pedestal. I don't even want to call it a coffee table because it's a pedestal for her. And then
the only thing missing were the palm leaves to fan her and the grapes to feed her.
Right.
And the people to wash her feet.
Yep. And this is the behavior. This is the behavior that's been going on post September 10th.
Well, there you go, guys. Using God, mocking God to pretty much say, it's okay that Charlie's dead. I mean, these people implicate themselves. I mean, they pretty much are guilty. They're happy as can be. They're so happy. They don't look sad at all. This is just a few months after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And this is the behavior coming from the closest people to him. Speaking of behavior, Lacey Nagel.
Yeah, it's odd. But again, one of the problems is these people are so superficial that watch the TV series Capote Swans. I mean, the treatment that I've gotten from everybody I know, just because I want to, clean up the corruption. I'm exposing everything that's going on, family courts. Oh, just get over it. Just get over it. Just get over it. Find yourself a new meal ticket husband before you get too old because you're being ostracized from, this is also, this, with my mother, the whole thing about getting the debutante party was, she'll find a respectable husband this way. I mean, my mother was living in another century, but I know that's what was going through her mind. And then, of course, when I made it out of Spain alive and got back to Washington, she was hoping, of course, if I couldn't get a decent job, I'm going to have to find myself a meal ticket husband. Now, believe it or not, I could have done that if that had been my objective. My favorite story is when Juan Williams, the journalist who got fired from NPR in 2010 for stupid stuff, freedom of speech stuff. He's asking me if the ring on my left-hand finger is a wedding band when I'm trying to talk to him about his new book about the Founding Fathers. No wonder his wife's always worried about whether he's having an affair or what he's doing behind her back. And I promise you, she is the whitest black person I have ever seen in my life. Playing the race card every place they can do.
Who's the senior director for Chase the Vote at Turning Point Action. That's CTV. That is the program I was in. That's to get our elected officials, our candidates elected to become elected officials, the door knocking, etc. That is the program that Turning Point Action created. Well, she showed up to my friend's Super Chase, which is just, it's like a small rally. It's a Super Chase. It's like, get out the vote. Everybody come sign up now. We're meeting at the park. We're meeting here. Tents are going to be set up, etc. That's what a Super Chase event is about. Well, this is my friend's Super Chase, and Lacey shows up drunk. The senior director makes everything awkward and uncomfortable. And I'm going to show you that clip now.
I'm Lacey McGow. I'm the national director for Chase the Vote. And I just want to thank all of you so much for being here tonight. There is no one that believed in chasing ballots more than Charlie Kirk. And I can say that with complete confidence right now. Charlie, one thing that he always talked about was having a Republican infrastructure that lasted much longer than one election cycle. Amen. And that's one thing that...
I'm not sure if she's drunk. Because there was another occasion, I think she was at a high school. She might be also on some, tranquilizers or something, which could be aggravated from alcohol. What looks more like to me like
the Democrats were really good at. And sadly, we were not. And that's where Chase the Vote was born. And that's essentially why I got a job. And now we got to live his legacy on. And as you can imagine, it's been...
Also, I think that she, she's so used to reading from a script. It would be interesting to find out, because most of the time she's always reading from some sort of script.
Quite the month. From sadness to a lot of hatred, to be completely honest.
Did you see how uncomfortable the guys standing behind her were? My friend was mortified. My friend brought this to her manager's attention. And guess what? The manager didn't do anything about it. They covered it up. That's what Turning Point does. They can't take accountability for their own people. And then we have Lacey showing pictures of her Christian Dior bag and a cocktail at Mar-a-Lago during the $10,000 a plate extravaganza.
I mean, that's,
And showing her and other influencers and other people happy as can be. And this is just weeks after Charlie died. These people have no shame. They're disgusting. And it is an abomination at this point. Now we have...
I have to say, I always thought, in I don't know if you'll still see that in Europe, in Southern Europe, but when I was young and I was there, you would see these women in black in the villages. Like their husband, they would die and they would wear black for the rest of their lives. My ex-husband's, one of his grandmothers, she wore black. This is an atheist family. She was the only one who believed in God, but Lord, she was a piece of work. Real two-faced hypocrite. But the other one, who was the kind Christian one who had been married to the communist, and she, they would tease her grandsons would tease her, but she was not as atheist as she said. But anyway, she was a very dear and a true lady, una señora. She would always talk about the señoras de la Moraleja, which is this northern, upper crust suburb of Madrid. And I was always like, Memi Carmen de Villaverde. She was of the southern working class neighborhoods. Más señora de cualquiera de la Moraleja. More of a lady than any of the cualquiera means any one of those pretentious señoras of the upper crust neighborhoods. I mean, God. Yeah, that's after I finish with Washington, I gotta go and clean up Madrid. Like what? And I got Paris to do as well. My Lord, you people, come on.
Have Erica Kirk out there jumping in a pool full of balls, saying balls deep. Take a listen to this.
Balls deep. Yep, balls deep. Wow. Hello.
And we can't forget the infamous sex sells babe.
Sex sells babe. Hi.
Good morning, America.
Really handsome. You look gorgeous.
You know what, everybody? Before we close out, I just wanted to bring my experience. I wanted to bring some of the things that were sent to me from former Turning Point insiders like myself, like the Erica Kirk raised on a coffee.
I think he's gone a little bit hard on Erica. I mean, yeah, definitely. This happy, we're all happy. But see, also, this is, you know, perhaps also why Erica is medicated. Because as I say, there she sounded more to me maybe on medication, and the other time that I saw her as well, that she was like, it looked like she might have been drunk. Then people were saying she was drunk. I was like, I think it's medication. As I say, maybe aggravated by some alcohol, but it doesn't take much of the alcohol to have the medication be aggravating. So yeah, I don't know. It just, there's a lot of questions. I mean, the real crux of all of this, behind all of the drama and the questions surrounding the assassination, the reaction of the people, TPUSA, Charlie's widow, is how our political processes are being manipulated. You get in their way, you don't listen, you know, you don't obey, and they're going to take you out. You know, I really don't know if Erica ever loved her husband. I've seen very few women. Oh my Lord, if I had a penny for every woman that I knew who married a meal ticket husband, I'd be very wealthy. So that's nothing new. Did she ever really love him? Is she have any real grief? I don't know. Yeah. Doesn't appear so, but she is a very superficial, dumb blonde bimbo. I mean, these girls really have no inner self, is one of the issues that you're dealing with.
Coffee table, dressed in gold, Mikey McCoy. Oh, Miss Erica Kirk. Oh, it's in our face. The horror of Babylon is a system. It is not a place.
Yeah.
And the depiction of the horror of Babylon is taking place right here in America. And Erica Kirk is doing a great job at depicting who the horror of Babylon is. Now, I'm going to leave you with something right now. I want to show you, Kid Rock. Yeah, Kid Rock, who was part of the halftime Super Bowl show. That was a complete flop that TPUSA put on, even though they bought their audience. They bought their audience. All right. So Kid Rock, pretty irrelevant. He needed a boost. So he jumps on board with TPUSA's Super Bowl halftime show. And awful. Lip syncing. Horrible. You know what? Kid Rock, this is what Kid Rock now has to say. And that's, remember in the documented portion of this show, I talked about how these influencers have no political experience at all, but somehow they start to influence politics. Yeah. Take a listen to Kid Rock.
Yeah. You fuck with Trump, you fuck with me.
Well, Kid Rock, let me tell you something. I know a lot of people in Detroit, and I heard before you made it, you were booed off every single stage. You know what, Kid Rock? You're nothing but a soy boy. You're a little bitch, is what you are. You sold your soul to the devil because people were picking on you on stage back in the day. Your lyrics talk about you selling your soul to the devil. Your lyrics talk about you liking them young and underage. And you know what, Kid Rock? The fact that
What's this thing with all of these influencers all over the place? That's being financed. I've been looking at internet more and more, YouTube more and more. And this is just as bad as mainstream corporate media and all of these social media influencers. I mean, it's out of control.
That you use women and you're a degenerate, and you use women as sex symbols in all of your videos, and you're an American badass. You know what? That's a beard. Now, it's my opinion, but are you gay, Kid Rock? Are you trying to hide something? You're a scrangly, scroungy little bitch. You have no reason to be involved in influencing anything politically.
I think that was basically.
Now,
I want to go to. I think that was mainly what I wanted to go through. Yeah, so let's look. Let's do the Babylon one first.
Herodotus usually does, but the truth is still extraordinary.
I mean, I had just always known of the Babylon Tower, and I had looked at that up. That would have been like 30 stories, which would have been huge. But I guess you also had the Egyptian pyramids. But apparently it was this huge city metropolis, if you will. And now I was looking at another one before this archaeologist this is in Iran. So that's kind of interesting right now with Trump wanting to take over Iran. But anyway, he was there, and in the Bible it says that this place will be populated by wildlife, and at the time it was like that was incredible because it was so such a big city and so amazing. And now you have some houses living outside and around there, but nothing on this land, and it is just wildlife. So it was interesting in the excavations they had done, and that was under Saddam Hussein. So I don't know, it's the whole Babylon thing is worth a deeper dive.
Imagine you are walking toward the largest city on Earth. The year is 570 BC. You have been traveling for weeks across the flat, featureless plains of Mesopotamia, a landscape so empty that the sky feels heavier than the ground. And then, from the shimmer of heat on the horizon, something begins to rise. Walls, impossibly tall walls, stretching across the entire width of the plain like the edge of the world. As you get closer, the scale becomes obscene. The outer wall is wide enough for 2 chariots to race side by side along its top. Behind it, a second wall. Behind that, a moat. And behind all of it, a city of perhaps 500,000 people, the largest, wealthiest, most terrifying concentration of human power that the ancient world has ever produced. This is Babylon. Not the myth, not the metaphor, not the cautionary tale that later civilizations will turn it into. This is the real, functioning, living city. At the absolute peak of its power, under the king who made it everything it is. You are approaching from the north, along the processional way. And ahead of you, growing larger with every step, is the Ishtar Gate. A monumental double archway covered in bright blue glazed bricks and decorated with rows of golden animals that seem to move in the desert light. Lions, bulls, dragons. No one in the ancient world has ever seen anything like this. Most of them never will. What you are about to see is an AI reconstruction of this city, built from archaeological excavations, cuneiform tablets, and the accounts of ancient travelers who saw Babylon with their own eyes and could not believe what they were looking at. This is the city that invented civilization, and in 570 BC, it knows it. The first thing any visitor to Babylon encounters is the walls, and the walls are a statement. Babylon is protected by a double fortification system that has no equal in the ancient world. The outer wall of Babylon was called by the ceremonial Akkadian name Nemed Enlil, which means bulwark of the god Enlil. The outer wall, called Imgur Enlil, is roughly 25 feet thick. Behind it, separated by a gap filled with rubble, stands the inner wall, Nemidi Enlil, at 23 feet thick. Together, they form a defensive barrier nearly 50 feet wide. Watchtowers rise at 65-foot intervals along the entire circuit. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing about a century after our visit, will claim these walls are 300 feet high and wide enough for a 4-horse chariot to turn on top of them. He is exaggerating. Herodotus usually does, but the truth is still extraordinary. The walls stretch for over 11 miles, enclosing an area of roughly 900 hectares. Inside these walls, and spilling beyond them into outer suburbs, live an estimated 200,000 to 500,000 people. This is, by any reasonable measure, the largest city in the world. Babylon has 8 major gates, each one named after a god. The most magnificent, the Ishtar Gate on the north, is dedicated to the goddess of love and war. But every gate serves as both an entrance and a checkpoint. Trade goods are inspected, tariffs are collected, foreigners are watched. A moat filled with water from the Euphrates surrounds the entire circuit. Metal grates are installed underwater where the river enters and exits the city, allowing the water to flow through while preventing anyone from swimming in. The engineers who designed this system understood that a city is only as secure as its weakest point. They left none. The man who built all of this, who tore down the old walls and replaced them with these monstrosities of brick and bitumen, did not do it out of fear. He did it because he could. He wanted every person who approached Babylon to understand, before they even entered, exactly what kind of power lived here. His name was Nebuchadnezzar II. His presence is everywhere. Every brick in this city carries his name. In 570 BC, Nebuchadnezzar II has been dead for approximately 8 years. His son, Amel-Marduk, succeeded him briefly before being assassinated. The throne now belongs to Neriglissar, a former general who married one of Nebuchadnezzar's daughters. But make no mistake, this is still Nebuchadnezzar's city. Every monument, every street, every wall you see was either built or rebuilt by him during his 43-year reign. Nebuchadnezzar was not born to the throne. His father, Nabopolassar, was a Chaldean military commander who seized power during the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. When the Assyrian capital Nineveh fell in 612 BC, the ancient world's most feared superpower disappeared in a single generation. Babylon filled the vacuum. As crown prince, Nebuchadnezzar proved himself a brilliant general. In 605 BC, at the Battle of Carchemish, he shattered the Egyptian army so completely that Egypt never again seriously threatened Mesopotamia. He then spent the next 2 decades systematically conquering everything between the Euphrates and the Mediterranean. His most notorious act, at least to later history, was the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC. He besieged the city, burned Solomon's temple to the ground, and deported the Jewish elite to Babylon, the event that became known as the Babylonian captivity. For the people who wrote the Bible, this was the defining catastrophe of their civilization. For Nebuchadnezzar, it was a Tuesday. Jerusalem was one of dozens of rebellious vassal states he crushed. He did the same to Tyre, though that siege took 13 years. But Nebuchadnezzar's real obsession was not war, it was building. He poured the wealth of conquest into Babylon itself, renovating 13 cities, but lavishing the most attention on his capital. The Ishtar Gate, the Processional Way, the Etemenanke Ziggurat, the Southern Palace, the Northern Palace, the walls, the canals, the temples. Every major structure you see in Babylon today bears his inscription. He stamped his name on the individual bricks, literally, thousands of them, so that anyone, centuries from now, who digs up a single brick from this city will know who built it. His ego was the size of the empire, but so was his talent. The city he left behind is genuinely the most impressive thing human beings have yet constructed. To enter Babylon properly, you walk the processional way. This is not just a road. It is the most spectacular piece of urban design in the ancient world. A ceremonial avenue roughly half a mile long, running due north from the Ishtar Gate to the sacred precinct at the city's heart. The road surface is made of large limestone slabs fitted together with precision. Underneath those slabs, the foundation is baked brick set in bitumen. This road was built to last forever. It very nearly has. The walls on either side of the processional way are covered in glazed bricks of deep lapis lazuli blue. Set into these blue walls in raised relief are 60 golden lions, the sacred animal of Ishtar. Each lion
the beginning of artisanry, and making things to last. It'd be good if we make things to last again.
Is roughly 2 meters long, made of molded brick covered in golden yellow glaze. They stride in a continuous procession along both walls, heading south toward the temple. The effect, walking between them, is of being escorted, or guarded, by an army of divine predators. The Ishtar Gate itself is even more extraordinary. It is a massive double gate, an outer gate and an inner gate connected by a passageway. The entire structure is covered in the same brilliant blue glazed bricks, but here, the animal decorations change. Instead of lions, the gate displays alternating rows of 2 creatures, bulls, sacred to the weather god Adad, and Mushusu, the dragon of Marduk. The Mushusu is unlike anything in your imagination. A scaly body, a serpent's neck, a horned viper's head, the front legs of a lion, the hind legs of an eagle, and a scorpion's tail. It is the symbol of Babylon's patron god, and it looks exactly as terrifying as it is supposed to. These animals are not painted. They are sculpted in 3-dimensional relief from individual molded bricks, each one fired and glazed separately, then assembled into the wall like a colossal mosaic. The technology required to produce consistent blue glaze at this scale, across hundreds of bricks that must fit together perfectly, is staggering. No other civilization on Earth can do this in 570 BC. Once a year, during the Akitu, the New Year festival, the entire processional way becomes the stage for the most important religious ceremony in Babylon. The statue of Marduk is carried from the Great Temple through the Ishtar Gate and along this road in a massive public procession. The king himself walks beside the statue. The entire city watches. For this one day, the processional way is not just beautiful, it is the axis of the universe. Even on an ordinary day, walking this road does something to you. The blue walls, the golden lions, the sheer height of the gate ahead, it is designed to make you feel small. It works. At the center of Babylon, visible from every point in the city and from miles across the surrounding plain, stands the structure that will become the most famous building in human mythology. The Babylonians call it Etemenanki, the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. It is a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid made entirely of brick, and it is enormous. Modern archaeologists estimate its base at roughly 90 meters on each side, nearly as wide as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its height, though debated, may have reached 90 meters or more. 7 tiers of successively smaller platforms stacked on top of each other, connected by monumental staircases, with a temple to Marduk at the summit covered in blue glazed bricks that catch the sunlight and are visible for 20 miles. You know this building by another name, the Tower of Babel. The story in Genesis, of a tower built to reach heaven, and of God scattering the builders and confusing their languages, is almost certainly inspired by this exact structure. The Jewish exiles brought to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar would have seen the Etemenanki rising above the city. For a displaced people whose own temple had just been destroyed, this alien monument must have seemed like an act of supreme arrogance. The story they told about it reflects that. But for the Babylonians, the Etemenanki is not arrogance, it is devotion. This ziggurat is the staircase between the human world and the divine. Marduk, the king of the gods, the deity who created the world by splitting the body of the primordial sea monster Tiamat, lives at the top. The priests who ascend those stairs each day are walking into the presence of the god who maintains the order of the universe. At the base of the ziggurat sits the Esagila, the great temple of Marduk. This is the richest religious building on earth. According to ancient texts, it contained a golden statue of Marduk and a golden table that together weighed over 23 tons of solid gold. Even if the figures are exaggerated, the real treasury was staggering. The Esagila was Babylon's Vatican, its spiritual center, and its greatest repository of wealth. Nebuchadnezzar did not build the Etemenanki from scratch. Ziggurats had stood on this site for centuries, but he tore down the old one and rebuilt it grander than anyone before him. He wrote about it himself in his own inscriptions. I raised its top to rival the heavens. 8 years after his death, no one has dared change a single brick. The Euphrates River does not pass by Babylon. It passes through it. The city is built on both banks of the river, with the older, grander western half home to the palaces and temples, connected to the eastern residential districts by a remarkable stone bridge. This bridge, resting on boat-shaped piers of baked brick set in bitumen, may be the first permanent river crossing of its kind in the ancient world. The deck is made of wooden planks that can be removed at night for security. During the day, it carries a constant stream of foot traffic, donkey carts, and trade goods between the two halves of the city. But the river is much more than a dividing line. It is the reason Babylon exists at all. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, is a flat, hot, nearly rainless plain. Without the Euphrates and Tigris, it would be desert. What makes it the most productive agricultural land in the ancient world is an irrigation system so vast and so ancient that nobody alive remembers when it was first built. Canals branch off the Euphrates in every direction, carrying water to fields that produce barley, wheat, dates, and sesame. The surplus from these fields feeds the city. It also feeds the empire. Inside Babylon itself, a network of smaller canals serves as both a water supply and a transportation system. Goods move through the city on flat-bottomed boats. Date palms line the canal banks, providing shade and fruit. The canal water is used for bathing, cooking, and brewing, though anyone sensible boils it first. The canals also serve as sewers, which is why the sensible people boil the water. The engineering required to maintain this system is extraordinary. Canals silt up. Floods destroy levees. The river itself shifts course over decades. Babylon employs thousands of workers whose only job is to dredge canals, repair embankments, and manage the flow of water. This is not glamorous work, and no one writes poems about it. But if the canals fail, the fields dry up. If the fields dry up, the city starves. Everything you see in Babylon, the walls, the temples, the gate, the army, ultimately depends on a network of muddy ditches maintained by men with shovels. The Babylonians understand this. Maintaining the canals is considered a sacred duty. Kings boast about it in their inscriptions, right alongside their military victories. In Babylon, water management is not infrastructure. It is statecraft. The southern palace of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's primary residence, sits just inside the Ishtar Gate on the western bank of the Euphrates. It is not a single building, but a vast complex of 5 interconnected courtyards, each one larger and more restricted than the last, leading inward toward the throne room at the heart of the complex. The throne room itself is the most lavishly decorated space in Mesopotamia. Its facade is covered in the same brilliant blue glazed bricks as the Ishtar Gate, arranged in patterns of stylized trees and flowers with golden columns and borders. This is where foreign ambassadors are received. This is where conquered kings are paraded. The visual message is unambiguous. You are standing in the most powerful room on Earth. Somewhere in this palace complex, or possibly in the northern palace further upstream, there may exist the most famous structure in the history of architecture. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, listed by later Greek writers as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The problem is that no one is entirely sure they exist. No Babylonian text ever mentions them. No cuneiform inscription by Nebuchadnezzar, and the man inscribed everything references a garden. The description...
Yeah, it looks like maybe that was a neighboring...
He constructed an artificial mountain of tiered terraces, irrigated by a mechanical system that lifted water from the Euphrates to the upper levels, and planted it with every species of tree and flowering plant he could import. We know for certain is this. Nebuchadnezzar did build extraordinary palace gardens. His inscriptions describe elaborate plantings. Whether they rose in terraces high enough to be called a wonder of the world, or whether the story grew in the retelling, is a question that archaeology has not yet answered. Either way, the legend says something true about Babylon. This was a city that believed it could reshape nature itself. Babylon in 570 BC is one of the most cosmopolitan places on Earth. The population is a mixture of native Babylonians, Chaldeans, Arameans, Jews brought in from the deportation of Judah, and smaller communities of Egyptians, Persians, Elamites, and others drawn by trade or dragged here by conquest. They speak multiple languages, though Akkadian written in cuneiform script remains the language of official business, and Aramaic is rapidly becoming the spoken language of the streets. Society is divided into 3 broad classes. At the top, the Awilu, the free citizens, landowners, merchants, and officials who control most of the wealth. In the middle, the Mushkenu, a class that is difficult to translate, perhaps dependents or commoners, people who work royal or temple land without owning it. At the bottom, the Wardu, slaves. But slavery in Babylon is not what you might expect. Many slaves are debt slaves, people who sold themselves or were sold by their families to pay off debts. Their slavery is often temporary. They can own property, conduct business, and eventually buy their freedom. War captives have it worse. The daily life of an ordinary Babylonian revolves around a few constants.
For all of the African Americans in the United States, slavery was not invented by the British colonies.
Bread, beer, and the river. Beer is everywhere. It is not a luxury. It is a staple food. Babylonian beer is thick, cloudy, rich in protein and calories, brewed from barley bread
with the water supply there,
that is crumbled into water and left to ferment. It is drunk through long reed straws to filter out the sediment. There are dozens of varieties. Workers are paid in beer. Temples distribute beer. The law regulates its price and punishes tavern keepers, who are almost always women, for overcharging or allowing treasonable conversations in their establishments. The penalty for a tavern keeper who harbors conspirators is death.
Yeah,
the markets of
treasonous conversations in their taverns, not exactly freedom of speech.
Babylon are vast and noisy. Merchants sell everything from Tyrian purple dye to Indian spices to Egyptian linen. Prices are set by supply and demand, but the government intervenes when it needs to. Weights and measures are standardized. Contracts are written on clay tablets in cuneiform, signed by witnesses, and stored in archives. Babylonians are fanatical record keepers. We know this because their records survived. The clay tablets did not rot, did not burn, did not decay. Tens of thousands of them have been excavated. They contain everything from royal decrees to school exercises to one of the most famous documents in history, a complaint letter from a merchant named Nani to a trader named Ea Nasir about the delivery of substandard copper. "You have treated me with contempt," Nani writes. The letter is nearly 4,000 years old. The anger is eternal. Babylon has been writing laws longer than most civilizations have existed. The Code of Hammurabi, 282 laws carved into a black stone stele and erected in a public place for all to read, was already over 1,000 years old by 570 BC. Hammurabi ruled Babylon around 1792 BC. His code was not the first written law, but it was the most comprehensive, and its principles continue to shape Babylonian legal thinking 12 centuries later. The famous principle, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, is real, but it is only part of the story. The code also regulates wages, sets prices for medical procedures, establishes liability for builders whose structures collapse, governs inheritance and divorce, and protects the property rights of women. A Babylonian woman can own property, run a business, file for divorce, and testify in court. She is not equal to a man. The law explicitly values her life and injuries at lower rates. But she has legal standing that women in many later civilizations will not enjoy for thousands of years. In 570 BC, Babylon's courts operate on a system of written evidence and witness testimony. Contracts are sealed, disputes are adjudicated by panels of judges, and verdicts are recorded on clay tablets. The legal archive of Babylon is vast. It includes property transfers, loan agreements, marriage contracts, adoption records, and criminal sentences. If you do business in Babylon, you do it in writing, and you keep a copy. The law is not gentle. Penalties range from fines to mutilation to death. A builder whose house collapses and kills the owner is executed. A surgeon whose patient dies may lose his hand. A false accuser is given the punishment he sought for the accused. The system is harsh, but it is a system, consistent, written, public, and applicable to everyone, at least in theory. In a world where most disputes are settled by the sword of whoever is stronger, Babylon offers something remarkable: the idea that even the powerful must answer to a written rule. Every night, on the upper platforms of the Etemenanki and on the rooftops of the temples, the priests of Babylon watch the sky. They are not stargazing, they are reading the future. Babylonian astronomy is the most advanced on Earth. The priests have been recording the movements of the stars, the moon, and the 5 visible planets for centuries. Meticulous observations written on clay tablets and stored in temple archives going back generations. They can predict lunar eclipses. They have mapped the constellations. They have divided the sky into 12 sections that we still use today. The zodiac is a Babylonian invention. So is the 60-minute hour and the 360-degree circle. The Babylonian number system is based on 60, a choice so mathematically elegant that it has outlasted every empire that has ever existed. Every time you check your watch, you are using Babylonian mathematics. The religion of Babylon is inseparable from this science. The gods are not distant abstractions. They live in the temples, in the form of statues that are fed, clothed, and cared for daily by the priests. Marduk, the king of the gods, resides in the Asagila. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, has her own temple and her own rituals. Nabu, god of writing, is worshipped by every scribe. Sin, the moon god, governs the calendar. The priests are not just religious figures. They are the intellectuals of Babylon, the astronomers, the mathematicians, the record keepers, the physicians. The temple is the university. The ziggurat is the observatory. The boundary between science and religion does not exist here because Babylonians see no distinction. Understanding the movements of the stars is understanding the will of the gods. Knowledge and worship are the same act. In later centuries, the Greeks will call these priests Chaldeans, and the word will become synonymous with astrology and ancient wisdom. Greek philosophers will travel to Babylon specifically to learn from them. Much of what Europe will later call Greek science began on these rooftops, written in wedge-shaped marks on clay. In 570 BC, Babylon feels permanent. It feels like the center of the world because it is. The walls are unbreachable, the temples are full, the canals flow. The empire stretches from the Persian Gulf to the borders of Egypt. There is no reason to believe that any of this will change. It will change very quickly. Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BC has already begun the unraveling. His son Amel-Marduk lasted 2 years before being murdered. Neriglissar, the current king, will reign for only 4 years. His son will be assassinated after 2 months. The throne will then pass to Nabonidus, a strange, deeply unpopular king who will alienate the powerful priests of Marduk by favoring the moon, god Sin, instead. Nabonidus will abandon Babylon for 10 years to live in an Arabian oasis, leaving his son Belshazzar in charge of a resentful city. And then, in 539 BC, just 31 years from now, Cyrus the Great of Persia will march his army to the gates of Babylon. According to later accounts, the Persians diverted the Euphrates River upstream, lowering the water level beneath the city walls, and waded in while the Babylonians were celebrating a religious festival. The greatest fortification system in the ancient world was bypassed by the river it was built to contain. Babylon did not burn. Cyrus was smarter than that. He entered the city as a liberator, not a destroyer. He freed the Jewish exiles. He restored the priests of Marduk. He kept Babylon as a jewel of his empire. Alexander the Great, 2 centuries later, would conquer it too, and die there, in Nebuchadnezzar's own palace, planning to make it his capital. The city endured for centuries after its political power ended. It declined slowly, brick by brick, as the canals silted up and the population drifted away. Today, what remains is a mound of earth in central Iraq, 55 miles south of Baghdad. The blue bricks of the Ishtar Gate are in a museum in Berlin. The clay tablets are scattered across the world's collections. But every time you divide an hour into 60 minutes, or circle into 360 degrees, or look up at the stars and name the constellations, you are speaking Babylonian. They built a city that was the wonder of the ancient world.
This is one of the hardest countries in the world to get permission to enter. There are only a handful of countries like it, almost fully closed off to the outside world. We've got our usual suspects, but then...
So, then we're going to do life.
For 4,000 years,
in Sodom, which kind of, gets into all of this, the biblical origins of the Israelis and, the Jewish religion, Jesus Christ, the Christian religion, all of these different issues. So let's take a listen to this.
Sodom has been a one-word answer, a single sin. A simple story. Sexual deviance. Fire from heaven. The end. But what if that's not the whole truth? What if I told you the Hebrew prophets, the ones who actually wrote about Sodom, never
cover some things that happened just after Charlie was assassinated?
For 4,000 years, Sodom has been a one-word answer. A outcry that reached heaven wasn't about what happened in bedrooms, but what happened in courtrooms, in marketplaces, in the streets where strangers were hunted like animals. Tonight, we're going back, past the Sunday school version, past the political debates, to the actual texts, the archaeological evidence, the rabbinic traditions too disturbing to teach children. This is what really happened in the most depraved city in human history, and why God had no choice but to erase it from the earth. Close your eyes for a moment. Forget the Dead Sea you've seen in photographs, that salt-crusted wasteland where nothing grows, where the water is so toxic that fish die within seconds of entering it. 4,000 years ago, this place looked like Eden. Genesis chapter 13, verse 10 describes what Lot saw when he stood on a hill with his uncle Abraham. The whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. Let that sink in. The Bible compares this region to two places, the Garden of Eden and the Nile Delta, the most fertile land in the ancient world. This wasn't a desert, it was paradise. Green valleys, flowing rivers, crops growing without struggle, trade caravans passing through daily. Imagine Dubai built in the Garden of Eden. Wealth beyond measure, pleasure without limits, zero moral boundaries. That was Sodom. When Abraham and Lot's herds grew too large to share the same land, Abraham gave his nephew first choice of territory. Lot could have chosen the quiet hills, safety, distance from temptation. Instead, he looked toward the valley, toward Sodom, and he liked what he saw. Genesis tells us he pitched his tent toward Sodom, not in Sodom, toward it, facing it. That's how compromise starts. You don't dive into darkness, you drift. First, the tent faces the city, then you move a little closer. Then you're inside the walls. Then you're sitting at the city gate, a position of authority, respect, influence. That's where we find Lot years later, a respected citizen of the most wicked city on earth. The Bible adds a haunting footnote in Genesis 13:13. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Lot knew. Everyone knew. He went anyway. He traded his family's future for a corner office in hell. But what exactly was happening inside those walls? What transformed a wealthy city into a place so evil that its very name became a curse word? The answer isn't what you think. Ask most people what Sodom's sin was. They'll give you one word. Ask the prophet Ezekiel the same question. He'll give you 5, and not one of them is what you'd expect. Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 49 through 50. God is speaking through the prophet, and he lists Sodom's crimes in order. Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty and did an abomination before me. Read that again. Pride, gluttony, laziness, cruelty to the poor. Then, abomination. The sexual perversion came last. It was the final symptom of a disease that had been rotting the city from within for generations. Here's how the progression works. First came wealth. The valley was so fertile, so strategically located that money flowed like water. And with wealth came pride, the arrogant belief that they were special, blessed, above the rules that governed ordinary people. Then came excess. When you have more food than you can eat, more wine than you can drink, more pleasure than you can consume, something breaks inside. You eat until you're sick. Then you eat more, because you can. Then came idleness. The Hebrew phrase is prosperous ease, careless security. No struggles, no purpose, nothing to strive for, just endless, meaningless comfort. And bored people with unlimited...
Sounds a lot like our societies today and our young people today.
resources become dangerous people. Finally came cruelty. When every normal pleasure has been exhausted, you start looking for new thrills. And in Sodom, that meant turning on the vulnerable, the stranger, the poor, the weak. According to rabbinic tradition, Sodom didn't just neglect the poor. They made charity illegal. If you gave bread to a beggar, you would be executed. They had a system. Merchants would mark coins given to beggars. No one would sell food to anyone carrying those marked coins. When the beggar starved to death in the street, they'd retrieve their money from the corpse. This wasn't neglect. This was policy. Cruelty codified into law. But making evil legal was only the beginning. What they did to strangers, that's where the outcry began. In Genesis chapter 18, verse 20, God tells Abraham something that should make us pause. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave. Outcry. The Hebrew word is za'aka, and this word doesn't mean complaint. It doesn't mean gossip or rumors. It carries a specific, terrifying weight. Za'aka is the cry of a victim, the scream of someone being murdered, raped, or destroyed when there's no one on earth who will help them. It's a legal term, the desperate appeal to heaven when human justice has completely failed. The same word appears when Abel's blood cries out from the ground after Cain murders him. The same word describes Israel's groaning under Egyptian slavery before God sent Moses. Za'aka rises to heaven when injustice becomes so extreme, so systematic, so total, that only God himself can answer. Something in Sodom was screaming. Someone was screaming. And God heard. Who were the victims? The poor who were starved by law, the strangers who wandered into the wrong city, the weak who had no protector, anyone who didn't belong to the inner circle of wealthy, powerful citizens. The rabbinic traditions preserve stories that illustrate this cruelty. They're not in scripture, but they reflect how ancient Jewish communities understood Sodom's wickedness. One legend describes the bed of Sodom, a special bed kept for visitors. When a traveler arrived, they'd be invited to rest on this bed. If the guest was too tall, they'd cut off his legs to make him fit. If too short, they'd stretch him on a rack until his body matched the length. Hospitality in Sodom meant torture disguised as welcome. Another tradition tells of a young woman, some say she was Lot's own daughter, who secretly fed a starving beggar. She'd hide bread in her water jar and sneak it to him when no one was watching. When she was discovered, the punishment was designed to maximize suffering. They stripped her, covered her in honey, and left her tied to the city wall under the burning sun. The bees came. She screamed for days. Her screams, the tradition says, were the za'aka that finally reached heaven, the cry that triggered God's investigation. They didn't just hate strangers in Sodom, they hunted them. Helping someone in need wasn't frowned upon, it was a capital offense. When your legal system punishes kindness, when your culture celebrates cruelty, when the screams of victims become background noise that no one even notices anymore, you've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. But on one particular
This is where we are now. What's so concerning?
night, the entire city would reveal exactly what it had become, and two angels would witness it firsthand. Two strangers arrived at Sodom's gate as the sun was setting. They looked like ordinary men, travelers, merchants maybe, dusty from the road, looking for a place to sleep. They were angels, and they were about to see everything. Lot was sitting at the city gate, the place where business was conducted, disputes were settled, and important men gathered. He'd risen far in Sodom's society. He had status, respect, a nice house. When he saw the two visitors, something shifted in his face. He didn't just offer hospitality, he begged them. Genesis says he pressed them greatly to come to his house. He insisted. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Why? Because Lot knew what happened to unprotected strangers in Sodom after dark. He brought them inside. He prepared a feast. He baked unleavened bread. For a few hours, everything seemed normal. Then, the sun went down. Genesis chapter 19, verse 4. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. Stop there. Read that again. All the men, from every part of the city, both young and old. This wasn't a gang of criminals. This wasn't a few troublemakers. This was the entire male population of Sodom. Fathers and sons, elders and teenagers, merchants, farmers, craftsmen, every single one. They surrounded Lot's house, and they started shouting. "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them." The Hebrew word for know here is yada. It can mean simple acquaintance, but context makes the meaning clear. A few verses later, Lot will offer his daughters who have not known any man. Same word, obviously sexual. You don't form a violent mob to introduce yourself to strangers. Picture it. You're inside a house. The door is barred. Outside, torchlight flickers against the walls. Voices. At first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The whole street is full. The whole neighborhood. The whole city. They're chanting, pounding, demanding. And you realize your neighbors are out there. The men you buy bread from, the elders you've sat with at the gate, the young men you've watched grow up. All of them. Every single one. There is no one to call for help, because everyone is the mob. Lot stepped outside and closed the door behind him. He tried to reason with them. He called them brothers. He begged them not to act wickedly. And then he made an offer that reveals just how deeply Sodom had corrupted him. "Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them." A father offering his virgin daughters to a rape mob. This is what years in Sodom had done to Lot's moral compass. He was so desperate to fulfill his duty as a host, so warped by the culture he'd absorbed, that sacrificing his own children seemed like the reasonable compromise. The mob's response? They rejected his offer. They didn't want women. They wanted the men. They wanted to violate, dominate, destroy. And then they turned on Lot himself. "Get out of our way. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." In Sodom, calling evil evil was the real crime. Lot had dared to judge their behavior. Now they would make him pay. They pressed forward. The door began to splinter. In seconds, they would break through, and everyone inside would be torn apart. And then the angels moved. Hands reached through the doorway. Not human hands. The angels pulled Lot inside, slammed the door shut, and struck the mob with blindness. But here's the detail that should terrify you. Even blind, they kept groping for the door. They didn't stop. They didn't run away in fear. They didn't take the supernatural blindness as a warning from heaven. They just kept trying, feeling along the walls, searching, obsessed. When judgment falls and you keep sinning anyway, you're past the point of return. The investigation was complete. You see, God doesn't destroy cities on a whim. Earlier that day, before the angels even arrived in Sodom, God had told Abraham his plan, and he'd explained his process. Genesis 18:20-21. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has come to me. God investigates before he judges. He sent witnesses. He gathered evidence. The mob scene that night wasn't just an atrocity. It was Exhibit A, undeniable, irrefutable. Every man in the city participating. No exceptions, no objections, no one saying stop. But before the verdict was rendered, one man had tried to argue for the defense. Abraham, standing before the Lord, had asked the question that cuts to the heart of divine justice. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? And then he bargained. If there are 50 righteous people in Sodom, will you spare it? God said yes. What about 45?
What if there
Yes.
are only 45?
40? Yes. 30. 20. 10. At every number, God agreed. He was looking for any reason to show mercy. Abraham stopped at 10. In Jewish tradition, 10 is the minimum number needed to form a community, a minyan. If you can't find 10 good people in an entire city, there's nothing left to save. No foundation, no future, no hope. When the angels searched Sodom that night, they found one household, Lot's. And even Lot was so compromised he'd offered his daughters to rapists. Not 50 righteous, not 10. One family, barely. The verdict wrote itself. The angels revealed themselves to Lot, their mission, their identity, what was about to happen. Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters? Anyone in the city who belongs to you? Get them out, because we are about to destroy this place. Lot ran through the dark streets to find his sons-in-law, the men engaged to his daughters. He burst in with the warning, "Hurry, get up, the Lord is about to destroy the city." Their response? Genesis 19:14. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. They laughed. The man warning them of divine judgment seemed ridiculous, hysterical, crazy. And can you blame them? Lot had lived in Sodom for years. He'd sat at the gate. He'd prospered in their system. He'd never preached, never warned, never stood.
I don't know. I don't understand if they had all been rendered blind. Okay, so this is the Bible. There's some details that are missing here. Okay, but
Stood out as different. When you live like the world for long enough, the world stops taking your faith seriously. Lot's years of silence had destroyed his credibility. His compromise cost him his family. They laughed, and they died laughing. As dawn broke, the angels became urgent. Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. But Lot hesitated. The Hebrew word is stunning. He lingered. The city was about to be destroyed. Angels were screaming at him to run, and he hesitated. Part of him didn't want to leave. So the angels grabbed them, physically. Escape to the mountains, or you will be swept away. They ran. Behind them, the sky was beginning to change. The air smelled different. Something was coming. The sun rose over Sodom. A beautiful morning. Golden light on green valleys. Markets preparing to open. People waking up to another ordinary day of buying and selling and eating and drinking. The last morning Sodom would ever see. And then the fire fell. Genesis 19:24. And the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. This wasn't metaphor. This wasn't symbolic. This was sulfur, brimstone, falling from the sky like rain, burning, consuming, unstoppable. The Hebrew word for what happened is hafhak, to overthrow, to turn upside down, to completely destroy. Not just the buildings, not just the people. The very land itself was cursed. The vegetation died. The soil became poison. The rivers turned to salt.
it sounds like an atomic bomb.
Where Eden once bloomed, nothing would grow
something of that form.
for 700 years. Modern archaeology has found evidence that something catastrophic happened here. At the site of Tal el Hammam in Jordan, one of the leading candidates for ancient Sodom, researchers discovered a destruction layer unlike anything they'd seen before. Pottery melted into glass, mud bricks exploded from within, human bones scattered in positions suggesting instant death. The temperatures required to cause this damage? Over 2,000 degrees Celsius, hotter than volcanic lava, hotter than any fire ancient humans could create. The leading theory? An airburst event, a meteor or comet exploding in the atmosphere, releasing energy equivalent to a nuclear bomb, similar to what happened at Tunguska, Russia in 1908. And scattered throughout the region in the ash layers, researchers find something else: sulfur balls. Small, white, almost pure, 95 to 98% sulfur. Volcanic sulfur is typically only 40 to 60% pure and yellow-brown in color. These are different. They're encased in burn shells, as if they fell from the sky already on fire and were extinguished when they hit the ground. The physical evidence matches the biblical description with eerie precision. But in the midst of fire and destruction, a smaller tragedy was unfolding. Lot ran. His daughters ran. His wife? Genesis 19:26. 12 words, one of the most haunting sentences in Scripture. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Why did she look back? The angel's command was clear. Don't stop. Don't look. Just run. Some say curiosity, but I don't think so. I think it was longing. Her heart was still in Sodom. Her house, her things, her social standing, her comfortable life. She'd been dragged out of the city, but the city hadn't been dragged out of her. She was saved from Sodom, but Sodom wasn't saved from her. Jesus, centuries later, would give the shortest sermon in history about her. Luke 17:32. 3 words. Remember Lot's wife. No explanation, no elaboration. Her fate speaks for itself. The fire fell, the ground shook, screaming filled the air, and then stopped. The city that had defied heaven for generations was gone. In its place, smoke rising like a furnace. Ash. Silence. Salt. Lot turned to speak to his wife. She stood behind him, white, still, frozen mid-step, her face toward the flames. A monument to divided loyalty. The woman who escaped destruction, but couldn't escape attachment. She made it out of Sodom. She never really left. The smoke cleared. Sodom was gone. But Lot's story wasn't over. Terrified and traumatized, Lot fled the small town of Zoar, where he'd initially taken refuge. He took his 2 daughters up into the mountains and found a cave. They would live there, hiding from a world that suddenly seemed full of divine fire. And there, in that cave, Sodom's corruption surfaced one last time. The daughters looked around. They saw no men, no potential husbands, no hope for children. They believed, wrongly, that the destruction had been total, like Noah's flood, that they were the last humans on Earth. So they devised a plan. On 2 consecutive nights, they got their father drunk on wine, and while he was unconscious, each daughter slept with him. Both became pregnant. The firstborn son was named Moab, from father. The younger son was named Ben-Ami, son of my people. These 2 boys would grow into nations, Moab and Ammon. For centuries, these nations would be thorns in Israel's side, drawing God's people into idolatry and sexual immorality. The shadow of Sodom stretched long. You can take the family out of Sodom, but can you take Sodom out of the family? Lot himself never touched his daughters, but they had grown up in a city where sexual boundaries meant nothing, where anything was permitted if you wanted it badly enough. The values of Sodom had seeped into their souls. They escaped the fire. They didn't escape the infection. The ruins of Sodom still exist. Somewhere by the Dead Sea, scholars debate exactly where. The ashes of that civilization lie buried under salt and sand. The sulfur balls remain scattered in the debris, white and silent, waiting for anyone who wants to see.
It is interesting to this version in, what happened to the Middle East. It was, it wasn't always this harsh desert. So the terrain was very different. So anyway, that's, where am I? Okay, so that's my little avatar, guys. So that was it really that I wanted to go into. I thought that was just an interesting, there's just a lot of questions about what's going on with the evangelical religions, the LDS, the Mormons. I don't know. More questions than answers at this point. So that's it.